A single moment can change a life forever. Tonight's story begins with a storm brewing on the outskirts of a quiet neighborhood, lightning illuminating terrified faces. A young black woman, innocent and determined, finds herself cornered by flashing police lights on a desolate street. Accusations slice through the night air, a crowd gathers. Whispers escalate into shouts of outrage. Fear grips her heart even as she maintains her composure. But what happens next, what the skeptical, unyielding cop discovers, turns the entire world upside down. Innocence is questioned, loyalties are tested, and karma cuts deep. This is the tale of black girl wrongfully arrested, what the cop learns. Next changes everything. Rain pelted the windows of the Richmond Heights Police Department in a steady staccato that evening, each drop echoing the tension building within its walls. It had been a slow week, with only minor infractions, a couple of speeding tickets, noise complaints, nothing too serious. But an unspoken electricity bristled through the station, a feeling that something big was about to happen. The chief, Leonard Murdoch, felt it too. A stoic presence with years behind his badge, he tapped his pen lightly against the desk, scanning the hallway through the open door as if anticipating the next storm about to blow in. Officer Shane Walters was just finishing his paperwork for a routine stop when a call crackled over the radio, attempted robbery reported at the Golden Alley convenience store. Suspect described as a young African-American female in a black jacket and jeans, fleeing the scene on foot. The detail was vague, but the radio repeated, "Suspect last seen near Crescent Road." Crescent Road was a narrow street on the edge of town, lined by rundown apartments on one side and an abandoned lot on the other. If you were trying to disappear, it was the perfect place, dark, nearly deserted, with only a couple of flickering streetlights. Shane nodded at the radio dispatch and stood up, his heart thumping with the adrenaline only a fresh chase could bring. He motioned for backup, but the station was short-staffed that night. Another officer was 15 minutes away, dealing with a domestic disturbance. Impatient to prove himself, Shane grabbed his keys and headed out alone. The sound of the rainfall grew louder as he stepped outside, his uniform hat instantly soaked. He muttered a curse under his breath, scanning the dark streets. Shane was still relatively new, only 3 years on the force, but he had a penchant for what he considered good policing. Some admired his dedication, others whispered that he took his job too far. The truth lay somewhere in between, shaped by his past experiences and an internal drive to be recognized as a top officer in the department. He maneuvered his patrol car with caution down the slick roads, watchful eyes darting between the windshield and his side mirrors. When he turned onto Crescent Road, a flash of movement caught his attention. Down the block, a figure bolted around the corner, water splashing from puddles with every stride. Shane flipped his lights on. The suspect seemed to pause at the glare, momentarily frozen before darting behind a large dumpster. He parked, heart pounding. Before calling out or assessing the situation thoroughly, he drew his firearm. Adrenaline spiked in his system, fueling a sense of urgency. "Stop, police!" he shouted, voice echoing in the narrow alley. Another movement. Shane sprinted forward, careful but determined, every nerve on high alert. There, crouched behind the dumpster, was an African-American young woman, about early 20s, hair braided and pinned behind her ears. She was panting, eyes wide, but not with guilt. It looked more like pure terror. She wore a simple black hoodie and jeans, not especially distinctive, except for the bright patch pinned to her jacket, a small embroidered patch that read Omega Community College Chorus. Rain poured down her face, and her sneakers were soaked through. Her name was Ania Browning. She'd been on her way home from a late rehearsal at the college's music hall, rushing to beat the approaching storm. She had a bright future ahead, an upcoming scholarship audition, a part-time job at Starbucks, and high hopes of transferring to Juilliard, or maybe even a prestigious music program at Howard University. Tonight, though, the entire trajectory of her life was about to shift. Anaya raised her hands high, trembling. "Please, I'm not," she tried to speak, but Shane cut her off. "On your knees, hands behind your head," he barked. She complied, tears mixing with rainwater. He seized her arms roughly, cuffed her, and pushed her forward. "I didn't do anything," Anaya pleaded, voice shaking. She was pinned to the wet pavement, knees scraping concrete. Everything happened so fast she didn't even have time to process. 1 minute, she'd been rushing home. The next, sirens, lights, a screaming officer, and now handcuffs cutting into her wrists. Shane wasn't listening. In his mind, she matched the vague description of the suspect perfectly, a young black woman, wearing a dark jacket in the same vicinity. There was no question. For him, the rush of the arrest overshadowed everything else. He quickly radioed in, "Officer Walters here. Suspect in custody. Black female, early 20s, black hoodie, jeans." He was about to recite her Miranda rights when 2 residents of the nearby apartment building stepped onto their balconies, drawn by the flashing lights. One woman shouted something Shane couldn't decipher. Another man, wearing a tattered bathrobe, hollered, "Leave her alone. She hasn't done anything." But Shane brushed it off as typical bystander interference. "Be quiet," he roared back, pressing a knee into Ania's back. She moaned in pain, trying to turn her head to breathe, to find comfort on the rain-soaked ground. As backup arrived, Officer Marion Jones hopped out of his car, a longtime colleague but more measured than Shane. The older officer took one look at the scene, Ania pinned on the ground, no weapon in sight, and frowned. "What do we have here, Walters?" he asked cautiously, scanning the girl's features. There was something about her expression that stirred immediate concern. "Robbery suspect, just like dispatch said," Shane insisted, yanking Ania up onto her feet. She was running from the scene near Golden Alley. Marion eyed the cuffs. "Come on, let's slow down for a second." "Miss, do you have any ID?" Anaya, trembling, nodded toward her jacket pocket. "Student ID in my inside pocket," she whispered. "I go to Omega Community College." Marion carefully reached in and retrieved the card. The lamppost cast just enough light on it. Sure enough, it read, "Ania Browning, Vocal Performance Major, Omega Community College." He looked up at Shane, a flicker of doubt in his eyes. "We'll have to check security footage at Golden Alley, but let's take her in for questioning." He turned to Ania, his voice calmer. "We're going to get to the bottom of this." Fear etched into Ania's features, but she nodded. She had no choice. Her mind swirled with 1,000 questions. Why had they targeted her? She'd never been in trouble in her life. She was more likely to be found in a practice room than on the street, let alone committing a crime. Inside the station, the bright fluorescent lights made everything feel harsher. Water dripped off Ania's clothes, forming a small puddle on the floor. Officer Walters placed her in a holding cell, ignoring her pleas for a phone call. Time seemed to crawl. No one explained anything, and shock overcame her. She tried to remain calm, recalling her mother's advice, "If you're ever in trouble, remember who you are. Don't let fear rob you of your dignity." But fear was all she felt now. Finally, an hour later, the chief arrived, bearing a grim look. As soon as he saw Anaya, a drenched, trembling college student, he motioned for the officers to escort her out for questioning. In the interrogation room, a single steel chair and a metal table under a buzzing overhead lamp awaited. Chief Murdoch took a seat opposite her, flipping through a file. "So, Miss Browning, you claim you weren't near Golden Alley convenience store." His voice was low, contemplative. Anaya swallowed. "I was coming from campus. I just finished choir rehearsal." I promise you, I have nothing to do with any robbery." The chief glanced at the clock. Officer Walters apprehended someone matching the suspect's description: young, black, wearing a dark jacket. But beyond that, you have no stolen items on you, no weapon, no cash. Is there anything else you want to tell me? His gaze was not hostile, but it wasn't entirely friendly either. Ania tried to steady her voice. "I was running because it was raining, and I was trying to get out of the storm. I heard sirens and got scared. I'm a young black woman. Sometimes things happen, and I panicked." A flicker of empathy crossed Chief Murdoch's face. But procedure was procedure. He signaled to the camera recording in the corner of the room. "We'll review the store's footage. If you're innocent, you'll be free to go," he said somewhat clinically. But Anaya sensed a seed of uncertainty had been planted. An officer took her photograph and fingerprints, then led her to a bench. The smell of stale coffee and cleaning fluid pervaded the corridors. Other detainees, mostly men, sat behind bars or in the process of booking. She tried to block out the jeering remarks from one of the cells, focusing instead on a worn poster on the wall that read, "Serve and protect." It felt ironic. Time dragged on. Hours passed while the officers waited for the convenience store manager to send over CCTV footage. Meanwhile, word of the arrest reached social media. One of the bystanders from the apartment had filmed the incident on their phone, capturing enough to raise eyebrows, especially the rough way she'd been handled. Twitter posts popped up. Justice for Ania began trending locally. A swirl of opinions, heated debates on policing and racial profiling started to catch fire. More and more people discovered the clip. A young woman pinned on a wet road by a single officer who never even tried to listen to her. The phone camera didn't catch the entire story, but it was enough to incite public scrutiny. Around 2 a.m., the convenience store manager finally provided the footage. Officer Marion and Chief Murdoch reviewed it in a dimly lit office. The suspect in the video looked vaguely similar height, wearing a dark hoodie, but in better lighting, it was clear the suspect had a different hairstyle, a different build, and a distinctive birthmark on her neck. The suspect was also at least 5 years older. The store camera's timestamp confirmed the robbery took place at the same time. Ania was likely still on campus. A quick call to the music department at Omega Community College confirmed there was a sign-in sheet noting Ania's presence until 9:45 p.m., matching her timeline exactly. Marion let out a low whistle, exchanging a glance with the chief. "This is bad. She's innocent. We've got a major problem here." They looked at each other, aware that Officer Walters, in his haste, had likely just committed one of the biggest blunders of his career, and they had a PR nightmare brewing. Chief Murdoch rubbed his temples. "I'll handle this," he grumbled, heading out to inform Anaya. The adrenaline from the chase had worn off, leaving behind the simmer of guilt and uncertainty. In the hallway, Murdoch found Walters leaning against a wall, arms crossed. The younger officer tried to appear calm, but his posture was tense. "Chief, did we confirm anything?" Shane asked, voice betraying a hint of nervousness. The chief locked eyes with him. "We've got footage. It's not her. She's innocent." Shane's face fell, sweat beaded on his forehead. "That can't be," she ran, and Murdoch shook his head, voice edged with irritation. She had every reason to be scared. "You arrested an innocent woman, used unnecessary force, and the worst part is someone filmed it. It's already on social media. We're going to have to clean up this mess, apologize, and figure out next steps. Expect an internal investigation." Shane opened his mouth to argue, but found no words. He felt the crushing realization that in his rush for a high-profile arrest, he'd violated the very principles he'd sworn to uphold. His ambition had blinded him to the truth. A wave of shame and defensiveness rose inside him, warring for control. He hated that he was in the wrong, but a part of him still believed he had done what any officer would do. Couldn't the suspect have easily matched the description? But guilt gnawed at him. If he'd just slowed down, asked questions first, maybe all of this could have been avoided. After a sleepless night in a holding cell, Anaya was finally released. The cold that had seeped into her bones felt almost permanent. She stood outside the station in the morning light, hugging herself as if trying to keep fragments of her shattered pride from falling away. Chief Murdoch handed her a formal apology letter, which felt hollow in her hands. "We sincerely apologize for the confusion," he told her. "We will return your belongings and will provide you with a case number for your records. If you wish to file a complaint, you have every right." Anaya stared at the letter. Anger and relief churned in her chest. "Does that erase what happened?" she asked quietly. "Does it erase the humiliation, the fear?" The chief's shoulders sagged. "I understand this doesn't fix everything, Miss Browning. If there's anything else we can do." She left without responding. Her mind whirled with the possibility of a lawsuit, media coverage, or a simple path of trying to move on. But beneath the anger, a deeper hurt pulsed, a sense of betrayal by those meant to protect her, a wound that might never fully heal. As Anaya walked away, she noticed a small group of protesters, mostly from the local community and Omega College's student body. They held signs: "Stop racial profiling, justice for Anaya." Their voices mingled in the crisp morning air. Cameras from local news stations circled, hoping for a statement. She wanted to rush past them, retreat to the safety of her dorm, but a wave of gratitude washed over her. These people, friends, neighbors, classmates, strangers, had come to stand up for her. They had risked their comfort to show up. She paused, took a breath, and approached. "Thank you," she said softly, voice trembling with emotion. A middle-aged woman stepped forward, a local activist named Wanda Green. She was a well-known figure in the community, always rallying for fairness in policing. "We're just glad you're out," Wanda told her. "You deserve more than a private apology. We want real change." Reporters crowded closer, microphones extended. One journalist from CNN asked, "Anaya, do you plan to press charges? Any comment on what happened?" Part of her wanted to hide, but she remembered her mother's words about dignity. Summoning her courage, she spoke into the microphone. "I was arrested because an officer assumed I was guilty based on a vague description. I cooperated. I was still thrown to the ground. My wrists are bruised. I spent the night in a cell. So many people who look like me go through this, and most of the time, nobody believes them. I don't want this to just go away. I want accountability. I want to make sure no other innocent person faces this kind of trauma." Her voice carried a quiet power. The cameras captured her sincerity, the raw emotion. It was broadcast across local and national channels, fueling the conversation about policing and profiling. One large placard behind her read, "She is somebody's daughter. She is somebody." And for many people watching, that message drove home an uncomfortable truth about how easy it is to dehumanize someone when you label them suspect. Officer Shane Walters walked into the station that morning, dreading the fallout. He saw the coverage on TV monitors inside the lobby. The narrative was damning. Innocent college student wrongfully arrested. A slow burn of regret and frustration roiled in his gut. As he headed to his locker, colleagues avoided eye contact. Some muttered under their breath. Others looked disappointed or downright angry. The departmental morale took a hit whenever an officer crossed the line. It was a reminder that everyone would be scrutinized more closely. His phone buzzed with calls and messages, but he silenced it. He opened the door to the briefing room, only to find the chief waiting for him with a stern expression and a stack of papers. Internal Affairs was launching a formal investigation. Shane had been suspended pending the outcome. Effective immediately. Turn in your badge and gun, Murdoch said, voice controlled but tense. We'll let IA handle it from here. Shane's face paled. He unclipped his badge and placed it on the table, then laid his service weapon beside it. The reality of his predicament hit like a hammer. This wasn't just a reprimand, this could be the end of his career. He wanted to explain, to justify his actions, but he knew it would sound like excuses. The facts were clear. He'd arrested the wrong person, used force unnecessarily, and the entire incident was caught on camera. He left the station with a heavy heart, images of Anaya's frightened eyes replaying in his mind. Guilt pressed on his chest, and ironically, for the first time, he truly considered what might have driven her to run in fear. Did she think he would hurt her for no reason? The question haunted him because the answer, in light of everything, was terrifyingly obvious. Returning to campus was surreal. Anaya felt both like a hero and a pariah. Word traveled fast among classmates. Some approached her with hugs and sympathetic words. Others gave a wide berth, unsure how to handle the gravity of what she'd been through. She skipped her usual routine. No Starbucks shift, no choir practice for a couple of days. Sleep was elusive, memories of the cold concrete beneath her cheek, reminding her of how vulnerable she'd been. Meanwhile, her friend Jade, a fellow choir member, encouraged her to speak with a civil rights attorney who specialized in wrongful arrests. Jade argued this was the chance to make a broader statement, to ensure real changes in police protocol. After much hesitation and discussion with her parents, Anaya decided to meet with a lawyer named Mark Hastings, known in the city for championing social justice cases. Mark's father had marched alongside civil rights leaders decades ago, and Mark himself had taken on the police department more than once. He had a reputation for being fearless in the courtroom. During their first meeting in his modest but well-appointed office, Mark Hastings listened intently as Anaya recounted every moment of that dreadful night. He took notes methodically, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When she finished, he set his pen down. You have a strong case, he stated, but it'll be a long road. The police department will likely offer a settlement to keep this quiet. If we proceed to trial, we'll need witnesses, evidence, and you'll have to relive this experience in a courtroom. Are you prepared for that? Anaya swallowed, nerves twisting in her stomach. Part of her just wanted to move on, but each time she thought of that humiliating night and the countless others who might endure the same, it strengthened her resolve. I'll do whatever it takes, she said. Mark nodded, a spark of admiration in his eyes. Then let's begin. As the lawsuit began to take shape, media attention intensified. National news outlets picked up the story. Social media rallied behind Anaya, especially young activists, college students, and those in the hashtag Black Lives Matter movement. Some community members demanded a public statement from the mayor, urging reforms. Richmond Heights found itself in an uncomfortable spotlight. Officer Shane Walters, now on suspension, watched the coverage unfold from his small suburban home, which he shared with his wife, Clara, and their 2-year-old son, Noah. Financial strain loomed as he was put on unpaid leave. The tension with Clara grew. She wanted to stand by him, but she couldn't ignore the footage plastered everywhere. He scrolled through comments online, feeling a mix of anger, embarrassment, and fear. People labeled him a racist cop, a threat to black citizens, a man who let power go to his head. Some posts called for him to be fired, others threatened violence. He felt cornered, isolated, yet a gnawing understanding whispered that he'd brought this upon himself. He tried to justify it in his mind. Cops have to make split-second decisions. The suspect matched the description, but none of that addressed the reality of her innocence or the brutality captured on video. One afternoon, while pacing in his living room, his phone buzzed. It was Officer Marion Jones, the older colleague who had been at the scene. Shane hesitated, then answered. "Hey," he said quietly, bracing himself. "How you holding up?" Marion's voice had a paternal note. Shane sighed. "About as well as you'd expect. I messed up big time." A pause. "You need to know something. The department is cooperating with internal affairs." The convenience store footage proves the real suspect is still out there. You arrested the wrong person, and they can't hide it. The big question is how severe the penalty will be. Shane rubbed his temples. If I had slowed down for a moment, he couldn't finish. His mind drifted back to that fleeting look of terror on Anaya's face. "Have you seen her? Is she okay?" Marion's voice was measured. "I haven't spoken to her directly, but from what I hear, she's lawyered up, and she's traumatized, which is understandable." "She should hate me," Shane muttered. Another silence. Then Marion's voice came softly. "You might consider apologizing. I mean, really apologizing. Not just some canned statement, but only if you're genuine about it." Shane ended the call with a hollow pit in his stomach. An apology was the least he could offer, but he doubted she'd want to hear it. Still, something in him pushed towards setting the record straight, admitting guilt, no matter the consequences. Within weeks, Mark Hastings filed the lawsuit against the Richmond Heights Police Department, naming both the city and Officer Shane Walters. The claim included allegations of wrongful arrest, excessive force, and emotional distress. The news coverage continued, with lawyers and pundits analyzing the potential impact on policing reform. Behind the scenes, the city's attorneys tried to negotiate a settlement. They offered a sum of money, a sealed agreement that would prevent Anaya from publicly discussing details, and a guarantee of revised department policies. Anaya and her family debated the offer, uncertain if a settlement would truly lead to the changes she wanted to see. Mark Hastings cautioned that a trial could be long, draining, and invasive, revealing personal details of her life. Anaya wrestled with the decision, the outcome of which could shape her future career and finances. While she deliberated, an unexpected visitor arrived on campus, Shane Walters himself. He wasn't in uniform, just jeans and a plain shirt, looking oddly vulnerable. Security recognized him from the news reports and approached, but he calmly explained he wanted to speak with Anaya. They called her to see if she was willing. She was taken aback, unsure how to respond. Eventually, with Mark Hastings' advice, she agreed to meet in a public courtyard, supervised from a distance by campus security. He stood by a stone bench, hands clasped nervously. The sky was overcast. Matching the tense atmosphere, Anaya approached warily, arms folded, posture defensive. "Why are you here?" she asked, voice tight. Shane cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "I came to apologize. I know that might mean nothing to you. What I did was wrong." Anaya stared at him, searching his face. She expected arrogance or excuses, but she saw a man weighed down by remorse. "I really don't want your pity," she said. "You can keep your apology if you're only doing this to look good in front of a jury." He shook his head, eyes flicking to the ground. "I'm not here under orders. I realize the magnitude of what I've done, not just to you, but to the community. I never planned to hurt anyone, but I acted out of fear or bias or ambition, whatever you want to call it. You didn't deserve that." For a moment, the only sound was the rustling of leaves. Anaya's heart pounded, a mix of anger and sorrow tearing at her. She remembered the humiliating weight of his knee in her back, the helplessness. Part of her longed to scream at him, to unleash all the pain she felt. Another part was simply exhausted. Finally, she found her voice. "Do you have any idea what you did to me? What it feels like to be labeled a criminal when you've done nothing wrong? I went from a singing rehearsal to a jail cell in under an hour. You changed my entire perspective on safety, on justice, on trust." Shane's eyes glistened with tears he refused to let fall. "I know. I'm sorry. I can't fix it. But I can say that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to help you, to accept the consequences, to speak the truth about what happened that night." Anaya studied him, her body still taut with unresolved anger, yet a corner of her mind recognized the sincerity in his voice. This was a man grappling with the reality of having done great harm, perhaps for the first time acknowledging the systems of prejudice that shaped his decision. She stepped back, crossing her arms. "I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure I even want your help. That's something you'll have to figure out if you mean it." They stood in silence. Then, quietly, Shane said, "Take care, Miss Browning. I truly am sorry." He turned and walked away, leaving her with a tumult of conflicting emotions. In the ensuing weeks, protests grew larger. A local group petitioned the mayor for increased training on de-escalation and implicit bias for police officers. The mayor, feeling the political pressure, appointed a new oversight committee to review the department's policies. Anaya, urged by Mark Hastings and the activists, testified at a city council meeting. She spoke of her experience, her dreams, her fear that those dreams could have been permanently derailed if the situation had escalated further. The testimony was broadcast on local news, further galvanizing public opinion. Meanwhile, the real suspect in the Golden Alley robbery was apprehended in a nearby town. He'd been using a stolen car, had multiple outstanding warrants, and confessed to the convenience store incident. The difference in his appearance was glaringly clear. This hammered home the department's fault in quickly pinning the crime on Anaya. It became an undeniable fact. She had been wronged purely through negligence and bias. As depositions began for the lawsuit, Shane Walters made a surprising move. He turned whistleblower regarding certain departmental practices. He revealed that some of his training officers had emphasized stopping suspicious individuals based on stereotypes rather than clear evidence. He named names and turned over emails from certain training sergeants that might suggest a culture of profiling within small pockets of the force. This revelation sent shockwaves through the department. Some officers felt betrayed, but others quietly supported him, acknowledging that changes were necessary. When Mark Hastings heard about Shane's testimony, he was stunned. So was Anaya. It provided more weight to their case, showing that what happened to her wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern. The city's attorneys scrambled to contain the damage. Public opinion, meanwhile, was firmly on Anaya's side. Amid the depositions, the city's legal team upped their settlement offer. The amount was substantial, and they included a public apology from the mayor and police chief, plus a written commitment to overhaul certain training protocols. It was more than many had expected, and Mark Hastings called Anaya into his office to discuss the terms. She arrived, tension evident in her posture. Mark slid the papers across the table. "They're offering a high sum plus reforms," he noted. "But if you decline and we go to trial, there's a chance of an even bigger impact. We could push for a consent decree requiring federal oversight of the department, more systematic changes. The risk is that trials are unpredictable. You could end up with less or the same or more. The main difference is that trial would subject you to cross-examination, media scrutiny, and months, maybe years of legal battles." Anaya stared at the papers. She thought of her looming audition for a scholarship, her final exams, the peace of her daily life. Even though she wanted justice, she also wanted to move forward. She asked, "Is there a real commitment to change here, or is it just words?" Mark flipped through the settlement. "It's more than words, though they'll need continued public pressure to follow through. The mayor is worried about re-election. That can be leveraged. The question is, do you have the stamina for a full trial? She sighed heavily, thinking of the nightmares, the endless interviews, the cameras in her face. I want something real to come from this, she said. Not just for me, but for everyone else who's been in this position. Mark nodded. Then you have to decide if this settlement is enough to ensure that. She took the papers home, discussed them with her parents, prayed on it, weighed her options. Public support was urging her to push forward, to go to trial and become a face for the movement. But her personal resilience felt strained. Ultimately, she decided to accept the settlement, with an added clause that the city must publicly disclose the changes in police training and that a civilian oversight board would be formed to review complaints of racial profiling. She insisted on transparency, no gag orders preventing her from speaking about her experience. Mark fought hard for these conditions, and surprisingly, the city agreed, desperate to end the negative publicity. On a crisp morning 6 months after the incident, the settlement agreement was signed. The city held a press conference. The mayor apologized, promising reforms. Chief Murdoch outlined new training protocols, including mandatory de-escalation and cultural sensitivity classes for all officers. The cameras flashed as Anaya stood by her lawyer, unwavering despite the swirl of reporters. What about Officer Shane Walters? Under pressure from the department, he resigned. The internal investigation found he used excessive force and had not followed proper arrest protocols. He faced potential legal repercussions, but because he cooperated with the whistleblower allegations, he received some leniency. His personal and professional life lay in ruins, the ultimate example of what goes around comes around. He'd lost his job, struggled with finances, and his reputation would forever carry the stain of that night. A swirl of public opinion labeled him a cautionary tale. He knew that was a form of karma, a direct result of his choices. Yet, ironically, Shane's whistleblowing had contributed to reforms that might save others from wrongful arrests. In some twisted sense, he'd helped spur the changes he once resisted. Still, the cost was high, and he bore it daily. He moved out of Richmond Heights, hoping for a fresh start somewhere he could atone by living a more mindful life. With the settlement money and newfound platform, Anaya threw herself into her music and activism. She started a foundation that provided scholarships for young black artists and supported legal assistance for victims of profiling. Her story became a rallying cry at local colleges, where she spoke about the importance of knowing one's rights, advocating for fair policing, and the power of community support in the face of injustice. Despite her trauma, or perhaps because of it, Ania found her voice more resonant than ever. At her scholarship audition, she sang with such emotion that the panel was brought to tears. She earned a full ride to a prestigious university's music program. Every note she sang carried the weight of her experience, a testament to resilience and hope. A year after the incident, a commemorative event was held at Omega Community College, celebrating the new oversight board, the revised police training guidelines, and Anaya's advocacy. Wanda Green, the activist, gave a powerful speech about the need to remain vigilant, to keep pushing for equity in the justice system. Anaya was invited to sing the national anthem, turning it into a moment of unity, a reminder that while one victory was won, the broader fight for racial justice continued. Word quietly circulated that Shane Walters, somewhere out of state, had enrolled in an online criminal justice program focusing on restorative justice practices. Some speculated it was his way of coming to terms with his mistakes, or perhaps searching for redemption, though most people in Richmond Heights only remembered him for his egregious error. A few recognized that his downfall catalyzed important changes. Whether he would ever fully atone or find acceptance was unclear, but his journey offered a stark lesson, ignoring fear and bias, neglecting due process, and violating someone's rights even for a moment can destroy lives, including one's own. In the end, Anaya's story became a testament to how a wrongful arrest could ignite a storm of accountability, reformation, and personal growth. The cop learned that power without humility is a path to ruin, while the community learned that unity can transform outrage into meaningful change. Anaya, for her part, reclaimed her narrative, proving that a single voice, when amplified by truth and conviction, can challenge an entire institution. And so concludes the story of a terrifying injustice that sparked monumental change. A talented young black woman, violently thrust into a system of prejudice and haste, refused to stay silent. Her courage fueled an unstoppable movement, forcing an apology from those who had wronged her and inspiring policy reforms that continue to protect innocent people today. Ultimately, the cop responsible for her anguish made a profound discovery. When you wield power, you must temper it with empathy or face the harsh consequences of misuse. Thank you for watching and engaging with Anaya's journey, her trials, her triumph, and the lessons learned along the way. If this story resonated with you, please like this video, share it with friends, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, thought-provoking content. Your support helps bring important stories to light and ensures the conversation for justice and equity continues.